Welcome to the Joanne Avison podcast. And this week, I am absolutely delighted. I have three guests. Possibly my youngest guest ever, Benny, who is, how old is Benny?
4.5 months.
4.5 months old, my youngest guest. We have to say, we kind of hope that Benny's not going to say too much, but we'll see what happens. Otherwise, I have Benny's mummy, Jessica Sullivan, and Jessica's friend and teacher, Calli Popham. Welcome to you both. Absolute pleasure to see you.
Hi, Joe. Lovely to be here. Amazing to finally meet you. Yeah, it's great.
Jessica, we had a lovely conversation recently, and we were all talking about the ways in which teaching yoga and learning yoga and movement is changing. And you were telling me all about Calli. And Calli, you and I haven't met before. And I just wanted you both to come in and talk about what it is that you're doing. Because Calli, I understand you have a yoga teacher training school and a studio. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I am the co-founder of Flow State, which is a new yoga studio over in Hove. We opened it last year. And I'm also founder of a teacher training company called Embodied Beings, which is it is what it says on the tin, really. It's an embodied approach to practicing and teaching yoga, in the sense that we look to move away from the old paradigm of alignment and top-down kind of processing and move into a bottom-up, non-alignment focused embodied approach to movement and yoga. So that keeps me out of trouble.
And I think from what you were saying, Jessica, it's actually really helped you through the process of giving birth, the everyday life of, because it's one of the things I'm always on about, that we've got to move for everyday life. And rather than, it's almost as if we abstain from everyday life, go into our movement processes, do them that way, and then go back to everyday life, and not always understand the discrepancies. And as a manual therapist, I'm often working with people trying to resolve the issues that shall we say, discrepancy can create. And Jessica, you just have a little word about how magical you found that approach in the adaptations you've needed to make.
Yeah, so I started working with Calli after my first son was born. I had an unplanned C-section with him. And so it was also during lockdown. So everything had sort of, in my personal life, through matrescence, everything that I thought myself to be had changed. And then everything in the world outside of me had changed as well. So at the time, it was very scary, the newness and the unknown. And, in retrospection, it was just this magical time of a rebirth, but in lots of different ways. I mean, the practice had been changing. My personal practice had been changing anyway since I did my training in Tantra yoga. So I've been practicing a lot of hot yoga. That was where I sort of really, really fell in love and decided that I wanted to also teach. And then I went, yeah.
She's remembering.
It's like, this is the juicy part.
Yeah.
So I went to Ecuador hoping to be a handstand guru, be fluent in Sanskrit when I came back, and be...
God bless you.
And when I got there, we would do this deeply restorative practice that was very spiritual, very sort of subtle, and it drove me crazy to start with. And through, that's the journey, I think, for a lot of people when they do their training anyways. Again, it's this journey of like everything, forget, and then start anew. And so that was the journey I'd been on. And then, through the pregnancy, everything was shifting anyway. But then, I imagined I would have this birthing experience that was the opposite in the end. And so I'm trying to remember how many months after it was that we had our first session, because I was too sort of scared to move. I was really, really frozen after the birth. And it took a lot of thawing out that we did together. And it was all about the space. I mean, we were on Zoom, but I still felt, because I knew Calli anyway, there was that sense of safety already.
Yes.
Then just the quality of the teaching, it was really coming from a place of my inner landscape and moving from like my center almost outward. There was a lot of embryology focused cueing, and it was just like, it was so life-changing for me. I was like, I feel like I've just had a 4-hour massage, and I'd just been like, I couldn't even describe to my husband what I'd been doing, like, what poses did you do and what it's like, no, I've just been rolling around and like moving from the inner corners of my feet and initiating movement from my heart space, and I feel like refreshed and renewed. And I suppose that was the beginning for me, when I had that one-to-one experience, being taught from this understanding of the fascial matrix, not from top down. Here's the sequence for you. This is what body you're working in, and this is what your prescription is.
Yeah.
Well, beautifully said. And Calli, over to you. It sounds exquisite to me. Where were you coming from? Because what I'm getting is this, as you've just said so beautifully, Jessica, this shift from this is the pose, almost the intellectual story of how you would approach it, to a much more intuitive, not sloppy, not unguided, but nevertheless aware of the entire inner architecture. So where does that come from for you?
So in terms of my teaching, years and years ago when I started teaching, I came from, as everyone I think did, from an Ashtangi top down, do all the postures journey, and had injuries and went on a big journey and found the work of Scaravelli, which was one of the pioneering kind of shifts in my teaching. Found her a couple of years into my teaching career, and she was the first kind of book I read where I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense to me. And went on a journey with Scaravelli, and then found your book many, many years ago, your first book, which the embryology side of things really started to inspire me. And then I started doing a lot of training with Bonnie Bainbridge-Cohen and her teachings, and just continuous learning of fascia, and also sort of just my own practice of trying to embody all of the learnings that I've had. Came into a place where, also having 2 of my own children, 1 emergency C-section, 1 planned C-section, and healing myself from that journey, I kind of created this way in which to work with birthing people and with people in general, to try and ultimately, I call it turning on the lights, where things have been switched off through pregnancy, through trauma, because I'm also a TRE facilitator. I work with TRE. Trauma/tension releasing exercises. I believe a while back you had Steve Haynes on your class. He was my teacher. Yeah. So I work with TRE, which is a tremoring process of the body and getting sort of trauma release through shaking. So it's kind of a fusion of an embodied practice, and it starts very much, it's on the earth, and it's about coming back into cellular consciousness, come back into the cells, come back into aliveness and awareness, and then from there we work with the yeah, I know, it's super good. And then working, as Jess said, it's just working on rolling, seeing where the kinks are in the matrix, especially after C-section, starting with the feet. Can you roll from the feet? Where does that kind of stop? And taking it from there, really. So there's lots of rolling and lots of breathing, learning to breathe again, full 3 diaphragmatic breath. And it'll build then. We kind of, each time we work together, it'll roll, and then inviting that freedom for someone to drop into the experience of, as their body rolls, where does that take them intuitively? And coming back to the spirals, the spirals, and trying to join the dots again when the dots have kind of been broken and lost through life, through pregnancy, through birthing.
I love hearing this. Obviously I do. Because as you know, my journey in yoga actually began with Scaravelli's work. And one of the things that she talked about was the anti-gravity reflex, this ability to find your innate recoil. I say system or architecture because it's not a mechanism. I'm completely allergic to the word mechanical, and I use the word mechanism as a figure of speech sometimes, and I catch myself afterwards going, oh, why did I do that? Because as you know from my book, the word bioemotional is about this bioemotional intelligence for me, that our movement can't be separated from our emotional awareness. And what I love about what you've just shared is when you say turning on the lights, I don't know if you find this, but it talks to me of how somebody doesn't even realize their lights have been dimmed, or that the dimmer switch is there to be raised or lowered appropriately, that they've got any authority over that when they're in that place of, it's a kind of shock. I mean, even if it's as wonderful and magnificent as childbirth, it's like, how did I do that? How did that happen? And I think the history that we've inherited is so, we're encouraged to be so divorced from our experience of motion and our kind of separation from the process of giving birth and the difficulties that are involved in that sometimes, that we have to kind of completely readjust our awareness. And I think it's a whole paradigm thing, that the paradigm of this is what happens in birth and this is the process you're going to go through, and you do that birth plan and then it goes completely like, how to cause havoc.
Yeah.
Give the angels a clue as to what your plan is going to be. I remember mine was so intricate, and the actual occasion was just another, the difference was like, I didn't know that difference could happen.
Yeah.
And yet what you're saying to me is that what you're gently doing is restoring that autonomy, is restoring that sense of, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't get it wrong. This didn't happen to me. I was separated from the experience of it in some ways by the language that's generally used in bodywork and anatomy and biomechanics. And so what I wanted to ask you about was the language that you use. You talked about turning on the lights. I just love that for 100 reasons, not least of which is that fascia emits light. And to the extent that it doesn't, so our wellness is available to us. And that's a scientific fact. And you also alluded to the cell being the inner cosmos, right? We talk about Fasciategrity as the deeper understanding that every cell is a cosmos within us, a microcosmos of the cosmos. And we could talk about that for about a week. So was there a turning point for you that you integrated this realization that turning on the lights was as much about removing certain ideas as it was bringing in new ones? Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's been over the past sort of 6 or so years that I've been really diving into this more embodied, fascial, cellular way in which to move, and really sharing that, teaching other people how to teach that. And as you say, Jo, it's that big paradigm shift of what we've been fed for so many years of there's a right way to do something. And if your body can't do this shape, then therefore your body needs to improve to be able to fit into the shape.
Exactly.
Whereas, the way that I and other teachers as well are starting to really kind of move and shift around that is that actually there is no right way to move. There's no wrong way to move. Movement is our birthright. It is what we were birthed into this earth to do. And the more different ways in which we can move, the more we light up the maps in our brain, the potential in our body. And that's something I'm really, really passionate about. And I work with people through birth, through pregnancy, and across the realms of all life. And I think it's been this shift away from recognizing, and it's quite hard when I try and share it with teachers and they've been taught a certain way. And of course, we're taught what we taught and we teach what we teach. And to help them understand that actually teaching without alignment is one of the most empowering things that we can do for another human being. It's the fact that I always say when I teach classes, trainings, you cannot get this wrong. As you move, you cannot get this wrong. If your body's moving, it's expressing itself in the way it wants to express. And if it feels interesting and invigorating for your body, then it's right. If you're facing a different direction, it doesn't matter. Because I think as well, my experience is when you're in a classroom and you're practicing yoga, the idea of getting something wrong or trying to be getting the alignment correct is so distracting. And instantly causes us to, as soon as we think that we can get something wrong, we have that ingrained kind of trauma response of the tissues freeze, don't they? Or if a teacher's walking up, they think they're gonna come and tell you that you need to move your hand or move your foot because it's not in the right place. And instantly there's tension, there's doubt, and no magic happens in that place, does it? When someone's like trying to check and make sure they're doing it all right, they're not embodied. They can't be. They're up in their minds. And that's where people injure them. I believe that's where we injure ourselves. Is when we're actually thinking, I need to make a shape. I need to perform this practice, as opposed to I need to go in and I need to feel and I need to sense. And I think the most powerful thing for that is, in a world where we're all so disconnected, is for people to come into their bodies and to remember that they can trust themselves. And that actually, we've been so disembodied, and the modern life kind of pulls us out of being in our bodies all the time, doesn't it? So I'm really passionate about when we land onto the mat, this is yours, like come back in. And the more we can trust the internal processes of our own internal landscape, our own physical sensation, the more we're going to start to move on and off the mat in a way in which it's going to serve us for the rest of our lives. You know, I want to be doing handstands and bounding around and moving really well when I'm 100, you know, and that's
Absolutely.
not going to come from rigidity and tension. It's going to come from my remembering the buoyancy of my joints and the fluidity of my fascia and the pulsing of my cells. Like if we can continue to remember this and move from that, I believe we'll all be, you know, moving really well until we die.
Yeah, I speak from the same hymn sheet, or a very similar one. I have a few distinctions I'm going to ask you about, but first I want to ask Jessica how your experience of shifting from, if you like, a formal, well, it wasn't formal, was it, what you did in Ecuador, but how did it release you? Did it give you like permission to be you? Tell me what happened for you when you experienced that.
I think it was so many things, because although Ecuador was alluding to the freeing up of the alignment, there was a moment on my training where there was somebody who was asking, where does my foot need to be in this posture? And our teacher said, where your foot lands is where your foot needs to be. And a lot of people were like, I need the black and white. I need the rules. Tell me where's my foot. And it was just open. But that is still it's called a tridosha balancing series, and it was taught to us in a, you know, sequential. You do it like this and you breathe like that, and then you open this chakra, and it is a series. But it was that was the initial opening, and then I suppose what it is that it still spoke to that old narrative that we mentioned a minute ago, that you have to work to a certain level to unlock the next, and that feeds into this. Something I think we get from formal education, like you need permission to express a certain level of movement or thought even, or feeling, rather than the expression, the thought, the feeling is the thing that shapes everything else. And I think, it was bringing it into that one-to-one setting where it was tailored to my body and my response. You know, you watch and you adjust it accordingly, and every micro moment, every micro movement is about me. And so it does build that trust again, especially after having a hard birth experience where you had one plan and something else happens. And I think as a woman, it's very, or for me personally, my experience of being a woman and what I put on the meaning of that, and, you know, I was very much like, this is what my body is created and built to do. And then it didn't happen, and it was very hard to stay on the kind of light side of, okay, sometimes things don't go according to plan, and it doesn't have to now weigh in on my entire idea of myself and kind of worthiness. It's been this whole integrated journey that I have heard you speak about the spokes of a wheel. And in a way, it's like we're able to cast the feelers out to the entire wheel at the same time without it being this fragmented, erratic, what about the physical? What about the spiritual? What about the implication of this? It just is the everything in that moment. And it's, as you know, it's homeostasis. It's everything will always bring itself back to the most vibrant, so much as it's got the kind of the safety to do so. And that's the journey that we've been on. It's just sort of like quietly letting go of anything that will feel like those barriers when you go bowling. It's like, no, you can't go that way, no, you can't go this way. It's actually like this really gentle embrace, like you are safe. And what you said, there's no way that you can move that's wrong. If you're going gently, and if you're really just being authentic with how you want to follow the feeling, explore the feeling. I've had such a breakthrough in just my quality of feeling from moment to moment, and it feeds into all of those spokes of the same wheel. I feel amazing on my mat, and it comes into the way that I am in a conversation with people, the way that I do my housework. It's like, yay, reach up rather than strain and try and get this. It turns into a dance. Like every single moment, it is that turning the lights on cellularly ripples out into turning the lights on everywhere.
I think that's beautiful. And one of the things for me that I want to sort of add into this mix is I think the body is an instrument of sound and light. And the fascia is the interface of that. It emits light, it transmits sound. We have great difficulty in explaining it in our modern day for the simple reason that the key two words are tension and compression. And we use the word tension in a negative form, meaning I've got too much tension in my body. I've got too much extraneous stiffness in my body. And the difficulty that we have is in explaining fasciategrity, which is essentially what we're explaining, that what it is that instead of the map that we had of the body or the model that we had of the body as a series of stacked bones piled on top of each other with a pelvis upon which the spine was carried as a passenger and the head balanced on top of that, quote unquote, as an upright inverted pendulum. However anyone got that to stick is really quite fascinating when you go into the engineering dynamics. It's like, what? Anyway, set that aside. The fascia matrix is, unlike a wooden wheel, is more like a bicycle wheel, which is a tension compression architecture, meaning that the spokes hold the rim and the hub together and apart at the same time. And where there is a lot of difficulty for people in understanding that is that what you're talking about is not only a tension compression balance, it's also a tension compression combination. So there's actually three forces at play. There's tensional forces, compressional forces, and the combination of the two, and that's three forces. So tension and compression are like the mother and the father of those forces, and their balanced combination is the result. And that's the foundation of fasciategrity, because every strand of fascia in the human body is both distinguishing something from something else, i.e. appearing to disconnect it, but at exactly the same time, it's joining it. So one of the big problems that we have is we've inherited the word joint, for example, and we talk about our beautiful joints and our lovely joints and all of that. Well, actually, joint comes from pin joint, and we don't have any more than we have any levers.
Yeah.
So we've actually been describing how we move in terms of if we built ourselves as a puppet and added the bits together afterwards, because we defined the parts and then we bolt them together and explain how they move, when in actual fact, as well you know, embryologically, we self-organize in the round at all times, distinguishing parts within the whole at all times. And it's very difficult because it's actually a leap in my world from 2.5D to 5D. And it's like, oh my God, how do we do that? We can't do that, I don't think. And I'm kind of throwing this out to you to perhaps refine some of the distinctions we're using. We can't do that without including the being that's animating that body, because it does it uniquely. And it does it spiritually, it does it mentally, it does it subconsciously, it does it unconsciously, it does it in every which way. But what I think is happening, and I'd love to hear if you agree with this, is, I think you will, is that we are beginning to honor the emotions, the feelings, the senses, the sounds that we listen to, the sights, the colors, the nuances that we see, and find a more united way of experiencing them on the mat. And while I think constraint is important, I think it's lovely that we have the name of a pose to play with, because it's a useful way to play the game. You know, it's a bit like, as an artist, we kind of decide which medium we're going to work in. But I'm totally with you. The idea that you've got to do a handstand this way, or dog pose is one of my favorites, that everybody's got to get their heels on the floor. And stretch their calves and stretch the S word. Don't even talk to me about it. And this beautiful spring-loaded architecture. You've never seen a dog walking with its heels on the ground. Just saying, ever in your life. It sits with its heels on the ground. It doesn't walk with its heels on the ground. Hello. Set that aside. This magic of moving through inspiration from within, not licensed to do anything. I actually would say that there can be ways of moving that are less optimal than others.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That. Yeah.
When we're forcing transmission through our tissue in a way that doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. But at the same time, we can throw ourselves around. I mean, for example, let me give you an example, Calli, see where you go with this. I have a very dear friend who does a lot of 5 rhythms work and said that it's beautiful, inspirational, free motion. But it's very common that back pain goes with it. I work with hundreds, if not thousands, of yoga teachers, and I can't tell you that a yoga teacher's never been on my table because yoga is so wonderful it doesn't cause pain. Don't be daft. Do you know what I mean? So there are things that we can do that do not serve us because we don't understand the fascia and how it actually works.
Yeah.
But where I think you're talking about is this bridge from the formal, alignment-based, form-focused posture production programs.
Yeah.
Towards a freedom of motion that actually gives us breathing space and honors who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What I tend to call the postures, the poses are gestures, suggestions of a way or two, and how everyone is going to have a different placement of their feet. And then, and I also encourage curiosity. One of my big things is as soon as you arrive into any gesture, posture, it begins there because there's breath. So from a more traditional stance where you land and you hold and you perfect, what I encourage and I invite is sort of you land into the posture, and that's the beginning. It's not the end. It's not then.
Lovely.
It's then how the breath informs the body to find more space. And I try and use the word tonality as opposed to tension. So there's an aliveness that is through the entire body. There's a tonality, but it's not tension. It's not held and stuck. It's like it's a pulse that runs through every part of you. It's spanda. It's that cosmic pulse that runs through. And so when we'll take time in each gesture and arrive somewhere, and there'll be an evolution through the breath, and I'll invite that. So every time you inhale, obviously there's an effect on the spine. How does that move you? And I often, as you know, I'll ask way more questions when I teach than I'll ever give answers. Like, how does it feel when you do this? And what happens when you put your hand here? So I'm inviting inquiry for people to go, oh, actually, this feels like the most stable place or the most alive place for me to be, as opposed to this is where the hands go, lift your chest, and this is the back bend. It's like, try it here. And which one feels best? Which one feels most integrated? Which one feels most alive? And then work there. And where does that take you? And so I'm always kind of giving suggestions, and it's not a direction, it's a jump off point, and so it's always really handing it back. So every time we land somewhere, how could you feel more? How could you bring more aliveness, less tension, whatever it might be that I see in the room that we're looking to kind of cultivate. But I say that every time I teach a teacher training, I'm like, I'm going to ask you more questions than I ever give you answers. Go and find the answers for yourself, because we're all going to have a different answer, aren't we, from our own experience and all the layers that we hold of that emotional body and our own fascial matrix and how we're holding ourselves and the trauma that we have throughout life. And everything plays a part, doesn't it, once you land onto the mat? And every day will be different. And every day there'll be a different suggestion or a different expression of the practice. And that's what I love to honor is everyone in the room being able to have their own experience without me trying to superimpose what it should feel like or what it should look like. Yeah.
I love that. And what to me you're explaining is how, I don't know if you agree with this, I suspect you will, that we can actually bring presence to the occasion and then go in and play there.
Yeah.
Rather than, I think sometimes, even in a spiritual practice, I know for myself, I kind of waited till presence arrived. And it was quite a seminal moment for me when I realized that I was the presence that I could bring to the occasion and work within.
Yeah.
You know, and I am still studying Surat Shabda yoga, which is yoga of the sound current. And it brings us to a place of listening to our tissue. And I think that's what you're talking about. I think we're all singing off the same hymn sheet. And that it's this very beautiful place that you can bring that presence and that listening. And then you discover that you're the listener, and what you're listening to is you listening. And what I'm hearing from both of you, and it really is delightful to hear this, is this permission. Because I think whether we like it or not, we inherit what we learn. We inherit the style, the trend, the modus operandi of the culture that we're in. And yoga is a relatively young culture in the West.
Yeah.
And I think it's been somewhat organized in a way that's perhaps taken it away from the essence of self-awareness that it's actually designed for. And I think what you're doing is so clearly restoring that and taking us back across the Rubicon, I call it, from this intellectual process where you tick boxes and reach standards, which we need. I mean, you know, we've all done our teacher trainings in order to incorporate those standards and make it safe. You're not talking about hurling people around the room and doing things that can cause damage. Quite the opposite, taking people deep inside to do micro work that actually honors the system and restores, but gives it permission to be the way that it's designed to be. Because I think sometimes you talk, Jessica, about self-worth. And somebody said to me the other day, why do you teach embryology? And I said, I don't teach embryology as such. I remind people that they're all embryos and how incredibly amazing they already are. If everybody realized, I was on stage presenting at a marketing conference. And so it was nothing to do with the body work or anything. But I was just saying to everybody, if you take out your phone, you'll see in settings, there's something called sounds and haptics. And that's the feedback of the liquid crystal screen that you are gesturing. And if you think of the fascia of every interface of every cell, of every strand of tissue, it's a liquid crystal. So it's doing the same thing. It's haptically feeding back every gesture you make and giving ourselves permission to experience that. I mean, Jessica, you kind of alluded to that it made you feel safe again being inside yourself, because that's the only place you have to go. There isn't anywhere else. And I think one of the things you said, Calli, beautifully about curiosity is this permission for mystery, permission to not know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And that curiosity means that you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? I said, what I should do next is, and therefore, and I'm not very good at it. It's, wow, now what? And it takes a lot of courage to set up a classroom and a teacher training on that basis. And I don't know, I just want to acknowledge you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's beautiful. And since I moved down from London a few years back, and I'd been teaching in the same place for over a decade, and we'd kind of created, we were one of the probably first places in London that started to create and teach a more experiential, slightly different, more progressive style of movement and yoga. And so when I moved down and I was going around, I was like, oh, it's really quite different down here. And there wasn't anything like what we'd been teaching where we were. And so it's a big journey for me, because I moved down from, teaching trainings for years, having classrooms of people that really got what I was about and were just in it, to coming down and being almost like, oh, no one's getting it. And it was like, oh, it was just after lockdown. So there was all of that kind of weird energy as well of coming back out into the world. I just moved into a new place. And so I kind of went on a journey of having to stay true to myself and not necessarily go into a room and teach what everyone was expecting, and go back to what I knew people wanted. But I was like, I'd gone so far beyond that in myself. I was like, I have to, but what I did have to do was go on a journey of about 6 years back. I was like, okay, how did I bring people to this point years ago when it was new then where I was teaching. And so I had to kind of go back on a journey of myself and be little drip feeding little things into classes where people weren't ready to be in that kind of realm of more of an experiential, more feeling place. And it was very much, feet and hands and alignment. And so I was like, okay, just sort of like little crumbs. Come here, I can, let me show you this, and just pointing towards little things over time. And then was very lucky to get the chance to open up Flow State. And then I was like, okay, well, this is what we do here. So, I didn't need to fit into anyone else's idea of what yoga was. I could completely create a community based around, come, let's all just be human together and roll around and feel and sense. And, with the trauma work I do with TRE, what's so important to me is creating a place of safety where people can come and just be who they are. No love and light, we don't have to good vibes only. It's like, come be yourself. If you need to cry, you cry, this is a safe place. And your body is allowed in this space, however it moves, however it feels, like bring it in and let yourself really tend to yourself. It's about tending to yourself and coming out of that place of self-doubt. I think in the modern world, we've all, throughout lifetimes, haven't we? Like self-doubt, playing small, imposter syndrome, all of those constant stories that sit over the hood of our beingness. And we don't need to apply that to our physical practice. Our physical practice for me is you come in and it's everything. It's like you are, like you say, Jo, this is where embryology inspires me so much, is the fact that we were all just a singular cell once. And now look at us, like we are absolute walking miracles. Yet we all run around. I say every time I teach, we these absolute expressions of consciousness in the here and now, miracles, every single one of us. Yet we run around playing small, doubting ourselves, and so every time I teach, my hope is, and my passion is, to bring people to a place where they can just fall in love with being themselves again, and they can move from a place of joy and expression and take that then out into the world and make the world a better place.
God, that's just amen. And I just want to say, you talked about tending to yourself, and what you made me think of is tending with tenderness. I think I'm going to call this podcast that, because that's what I think you've done, and that's what we're seeing. Anyone who's seeing this on YouTube, you're just seeing Jessica so relaxed and happy, with Benny being so tenderly treated. And I think it's that, isn't it? It's treating ourselves as well as we would treat our child. And I know from all kinds of work, our own ability to parent ourselves and love the way we are, because we are that way, and forgive ourselves for the things that we think we should have, would have, could have done if only. Take that out of our dictionary, but take that out of our movement expression, is what it sounds like you're doing. Yeah. And I want to acknowledge that. And Jessica, I think, is what you're embodying, is being given permission to have that curiosity and treat yourself with the tenderness, tend yourself with the tenderness that you give that beautiful little baby in your arms.
It's such a privilege to witness where we all come from. There's so many humbling moments along the way, right from preconception all the way through to never ending, when we're raising new people. And it's happened a lot of times along the way, studying biomedicine. When I first learned about homeostasis in the cell, I was like, so why would anyone ever question, our ability to self-regulate, self-heal, and going back to, how we originate with the self-organizing. It really is, it takes these steps of integration, I suppose, depending on the person and where they're at and how open they are to it, because it's strange, because it can come across as airy-fairy, but it's so scientific. It's this beautiful,
absolutely,
it really is. It really is in black and white. And now that all the science is coming to back it, especially in the West, we need that. So a lot of people here need that. Where's the proof? It's like we are the living, walking, talking, breathing, dancing truth. But understanding physiology and putting the physiology first is so empowering, there's a brilliant quote that I read recently on a page that is on Instagram. It's called Physiology First. And it says, nobody takes a mouse out of a field and then wonders why it's disordered. And it really is like, let's just go back to that, water, sunlight, movement, fresh air, community.
So fundamental. And one of the things, I have a very dear friend, Jyoti Manuel, who runs Special Yoga, and she works with children with special needs, and that often through the parents learning the yoga and how to work with them. And one of the keystones of the work is if we can self-regulate, we can co-regulate. And it's that take care of yourself first, then take care of others. And we've been brought up with this idea that that's selfish.
Yeah.
Well, hang on a minute. Just press pause. You and to quote Jaap van der Waal, as a unicellular being are whole and complete from conception. And you continue to grow and incorporate the things you learn around you, obviously from the placenta to start with, but out into the world when you emerge into gravity. You continue to gather the things around you that you can draw in and incorporate, and discard the things that you don't need, that don't optimize you. And that journey is, I know I sound like an old, boring crone, but that journey is the thing. And as we demonstrate our ability to self-regulate, and you go through that process of finding what doesn't work is as powerful as what does, then you're able to co-regulate little Benny, and then she can learn that, and it's an innate skill to her. It's not something she has to go out and apply. And I think you've brought that forward. That's the hallmark of what you're saying, is bring yourself to the mat, and how is that self organizing itself, and how can we optimize that for you today in present time? And I just think that's a superpower. And I think it speaks to the fact that we're all very instinctive creatures. And if we're living in present time, we're living in our instinct. We can only move in present time. You can talk about the moves you made historically, but you can't move or breathe a second ago. You can only do it now. And you can't move and breathe tomorrow unless you can, but you don't know that till you're doing it in the now. Yes? So right now, this is it. And that presence, I think if it's a listening presence, and you give yourself permission for it to matter, that you're listening to yourself first, so that then you can serve others and they don't have to look after you because you take care of yourself, is a superpower. And I think whatever you call it, what you're doing is harnessing, and that's not the word, revealing the superpower in all of us. I just want to kind of bow to you both, because I think it's fabulous.
It's been amazing to speak to you and meet you. And I think, it's just been such a big inspiration to the work, and everything you've given into the teachings has been brilliant. So thank you very much for continuing to inspire, and to actually bringing, I think one of the things I love about what you do, and which I carry forth as well, is that fusing of science and spirit. And Bonnie Bainbridge-Cohen talks about it a lot in her teachings as well, in the fact that often, like, science is just catching up with what a lot of us already know and have felt in our bodies. And now science is able to kind of quantify it and go, oh yeah, look, there's this, and look at this. And people who've been working internally with themselves for many years, like Bonnie Bainbridge-Cohen, who is huge,
brilliant. She's brilliant.
Inspiration. She's like, oh yeah, like, she's felt that. She knows, and she's been able to put names to it and wisdom to it. And then science is like, oh, by the way, we found this thing, So I think it's so beautiful to have, like you say, the science that quantifies it eventually, but there's something that is magic, isn't there? That can't be labeled or ticked. And I wrote about it maybe a year or two ago, of just like, science is amazing, but leave room for magic. Like, science is great, but there's always magic.
We haven't conferred, but my next book's coming out in November, and I just got the proofs, and it's actually myofascial magic in action. And it actually set up the history, the mystery, the magic, the 5 R's and the practice. And it really is that. It's permission for magic, as in permission for the mystery to transform itself into something different for each of us. And this is where Fasciategrity means so much to me, because it's so deeply based in the science. Donald Ingber's work, Dr. Stephen Levin's work, but actually translating it out of the biomechanical paradigm that we've inherited. There's nothing biomechanical about any human being, and into this realm. I mean, I call it bioemotional intelligence. It's this natural ability to be curious, to find out something, to incorporate it, but to do that uniquely, but nevertheless express it, and then work with it. And just to finish up, one of the key areas of that, for example, is scar tissue. Everybody's got scars. You know, you've had a C-section, or you've had dental work with scarring in the mouth, or appendix scars. You know, these can be very ordinary standard procedures that have saved your life. You know, I've got scars that have saved my life in the last 3 years, and thank you, God, for them. And we were writing about scar tissue from a touch manual therapy perspective 5-6 years ago. Jan Trewartha's book, Scars, Adhesions and Biotensegrity. And there's now research. Now, that research was actually done in 2019, but it's just coming through that explains the science behind what we already know. And I'm so endorsing what you're saying. It's like the science has gone, well, why isn't that doing that? And why isn't that doing that? And why isn't doing that? Because it's a different logic. And the human logic, and this is the key, the access to human logic isn't necessarily through a scientific paper. That's the endorsement. That depends on what question they asked.
Exactly.
The keystone, I believe, is what you're doing, is the experience that you had on the mat. You, Jessica, after you'd given birth. You, Calli, when you worked with her one-to-one on Zoom, because it was the only way to work. But to get her, and you know, it's an achievement. It's difficult through Zoom. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah. It's
difficult. But you did it. You did it through all your years of experience. You did it through all your understanding. You did it because of every single person you've ever worked with. That all came together. That whole wheel, that whole cosmos of the galaxy that is you, came together and imparted that wisdom in such a way, not that you told Jessica what to do, but that Jessica could experience that awareness for herself and walk away owning it. That's magical. That's magical. That is not a formula that you can go and intellectually tick 17 boxes and then say, right, I did it, and go out and do it. It doesn't work like that. There's that wonderful mystery that depends on who, when, where, what, how, why, and whatever.
Just to say one thing about, because me and Jess still work one-to-one together through all three of her, through all 3 pregnancies. But I never have a plan. When I work one-to-one with anyone, I never have a plan. I go in and something happens, and it's not me doing it. You know, it's not like I'm this amazing teacher that comes and ticks boxes and fixes things. I open up to the vastness of what could happen and watch her body and watch her nervous system. And you know, we were going to do a video, haven't we? Because when we work together in person now, which is much better than Zoom, but I become her body, you know, because I'm able to.
Yeah.
And I don't assist in a way in which I never assist in a way to correct. I kind of assist in a way to bring awareness. I think of my hands like ears almost. And, you know, we move together, don't we? We become like one body. I'm just like around her and on her and touching and just bringing awareness. And it's like something magic happens, isn't it? But it's like, I never think, oh, this is me doing this. You know, I never come in going, right, well, today we're going to work on da-da-da-da-da. You know, it's just like, okay, what do you need? And we talk, and then magic happens, doesn't it? And it's not me. Yeah. It's not you. It's just, it's really good.
But what's wonderful about it is that the scientific explanation of that, which we could probably go off and write, is such a slow, laborious thing. You just want to be in the magic of the moment. It's like you said, it's turning the lights on, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's like Calli comes in with the torch, you know, and we join lights.
Put the lights together.
Do you know, you make me think of the thing that whenever you have, this always gets me. When you light a candle, you've got the match and you light the candle, and suddenly there's double the light. You don't get half the light on the candle and half the light on the match. And then when someone comes up with a candle that isn't lit, they can put their candle to your candle and you get double the light. There's always more. It never detracts from itself.
Yeah.
I've always loved that. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you
for having us.
Yeah.
Benny's had the time of her life.
Oh, bless her. You take care, and what we'll have in the show notes are details of how people can work with you if they want to. So we'll put all that in the show notes for you.
Amazing. Wonderful to speak to you, Jo. Thank you so much for your time.
It's a magic.
Thank you.
Yeah.